Hi, and welcome to the meditation conversation. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and today I'm joined by Terry Tucker. Terry is a former college basketball player, a SWAT team hostage negotiator, a cancer warrior for the past 10 years, which included the amputation of his foot in 2018 and his leg in 2020. And he's also the author of the book Sustainable Excellence. So, welcome, Terry. I'm so happy to meet you.
Thank you, Kara. I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
So, I gave a little overview, but I would love for you to tell us about your journey that has gotten you to where you are now.
Sure. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from my voice or from looking at me, but I'm 6 foot 8 inches tall. And I actually went to college at the Citadel, a military college in South Carolina, on a basketball scholarship. When I graduated, I moved home to find a job. I was actually the first person in my family to graduate from college. And so I was all set to make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. And I look back now and realize how little I knew about business just because I had a degree.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was able to find that first job in the corporate headquarters in the marketing department of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain. Unfortunately, I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. You touched a little bit on my professional experience, so I really won't go into that very much. And then I guess finally, my wife and I have been married for almost 30 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
What? Oh my gosh. Well, that's fascinating.
It is. You probably should have her on here more than you should have me.
Well, I think you've got your own worth, but yeah, that is fascinating. I mean, you say like one sentence about your daughter, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
Wait, huh? Who? What?
we're very
Wow.
proud of her,
Well,
as you can imagine.
yes, I can imagine. And yeah, I appreciate that condensed version of a whole lifetime there. How did the amputation of your foot and your leg and all of that and your cancer story and all of that, how has that come to play a part? Because this is it's a big change going from first of the family to get a college education, and then you had the SWAT team piece, which in the military stuff, and then going into the cancer, and now you're an author and kind of showing, you have a lot of facets. So how have those kind of all unfolded for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually had a nurse recently who asked me, what was it like to have your foot amputated and then have your leg amputated? And I've told her it has not been easy. It's been a little over 2 years since I've had my leg amputated, and I'm still learning how to walk again, with a prosthetic. Obviously, at 6 foot 8, falling is not an option.
Oh,
You can
wow.
kind of get hurt in that regard. But what I told her was, cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And that's who I am. That's who you are, Kara. That's who everybody who's listening to us really is. And we all get hung up on, how do I look? Or especially when you're sick and you're going through chemo and you're losing your hair and your skin gets blotchy and all the ugliness that goes on. And we all get, kind of caught up in that, and myself included. But when you take a step back and you realize this is just a vessel or a house or whatever you want to call it to house who we really are. And we spend so much time working on our physical bodies and so little time working on our heart, our mind, and our soul. And that's really who we are. So, I mean, it certainly has been an entire shift in my life. I mean, it's been over 10 years now that I've been dealing with this cancer journey, and it just seems like it's one thing after another. And just when you think, oh, I'm kind of coming out the other side, well, this pops up or that pops up, and you just realize that it's your mindset that really, in anything we do, it's your mindset that either makes you successful in it or lead you down the path of, woe is me, everybody should feel sorry for me. And don't get me wrong, I have bad days. There are days that I cry, there are days that I get down, there are days I feel sorry for myself, but I just don't let myself stay in those days for very long.
It's so important, and I want to go back to the mindset piece because you're absolutely right. And I love that your mug is the size of you. That is a mug
It is.
for a 6'8" man.
And it's
And
water, I promise. It's really just
so
water. So
some people are listening to this and they can't see it, but it may be worth going onto YouTube and just looking. We're 5 minutes in. Go to 5 minutes and just look at the size of the mug that he just drank from. That's perfect. It fits you perfectly. I love it. Um, so I do want to go back to the mindset because that is a really important point, and there's a lot of wisdom in there that you're taking for granted. I feel, where it's like, oh yeah, we're not these bodies. Um, but I do want to just pause because there's a unique perspective that you're able to have that I'm curious about, which is in losing your leg. I I have heard about like the phantom pains that can happen when we lose an arm or a leg, where you can actually feel sensations where you don't, you no longer have. So your foot, for instance, you may feel like a pain in the foot that where there isn't a foot anymore. Have you experienced anything like that?
I have. Actually, I'm on a drug called Lyrica to help with the phantom pain. And yes, there is phantom pain, but there's also just the sensation. Like right now, I'm sitting here in my wheelchair. I can feel my foot on the ground.
So
I
what
can feel
That's
it.
fascinating. Like, what do you make of that?
Well, I've talked to my doctors about it, and basically what they say is that, I mean, I was what, 58, 59, 60, somewhere in there when I had my leg amputated. You have that many years of that wiring to your brain, of the feeling of your foot, the feeling of your knee, the feeling of the things that aren't there anymore. And I had a terrible, basically what happened is I had a tumor that had grown, for lack of a better area, in my ankle that grew large enough that it fractured my tibia, my shin bone. And so I was walking around for a couple of weeks on a broken leg because of the cancer. And so I still feel that pain, even though I don't have a tibia anymore. I don't have a knee. I don't have an ankle. But what they say is, you've had that connection for, 60 years of your life. It's not going to go away overnight just because we sever the nerves. Your nerves kind of expect to have that sensation going to them. And I am still being treated for cancer. I have tumors in my lungs. And on the week that I go for treatment every third week, the phantom pain is much worse. It kind of keeps me up at night. It's almost like a lightning bolt going through the area of my leg that I don't have anymore, and you almost jerk and that kind of thing. So it's been a real interesting dynamic to play out. I mean, you just sort of get used to, you live in sort of maybe a number four, on a scale of 1 to 10. It's probably a 4 in terms of pain, which is,
Mm.
it's not killing me, but it's just always there. So
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, I do energy work. So it's interesting because your doctors have they're looking at neurons, they're looking like the neuron network within your brain and then how that affects your nervous system and the nerves that would travel down your leg. For me, I engage with people also at the energy level where we have this like blueprint of who we are, and that blueprint remains beyond the physical. So it ties in really beautifully with the point of your intro where we were just talking about, we're beyond the human body. This is a temporary vessel, but it has an energetic blueprint. And so it's really an I find it very, very fascinating that we can have something that shows that the origin of sensation and the origin of our experience. I mean, that's what an amazing, incredible illustration of our energetic template beyond the physical body, because you remove a part of the physical body and you still can have the physical sensations that carry on. Like that's really very, very powerful. And I'm very sorry that it's such a physical pain for you. You know, I wish that it was like, wow, yeah, I feel these little, it feels like somebody's just massaging my foot all the time. You know, I would love for it to have been that kind of sensation. But I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I think it's a really powerful and unique perspective and experience that you have, that opens a door of understanding within those of us who are not in that same living experience.
Yeah, I was like you. I'd heard about people with phantom pain or phantom sensation, but I never, even when I woke up after the surgery, I could still feel the pain of my tibia, my shin bone being broken and things like that. And I remember kind of pulling back the covers. It's like, it's not there anymore. How can I,
Yeah.
shouldn't that be gone? And that started a whole, discussion with my doctors about, no, it's not. It's not like we take it off and it's gone. I mean, you have that
Yeah.
sensation. Your brain is wired that way. You still have those nerves. They just stop, somewhere down your thigh. So they're still
Yeah.
there though.
Yeah. Wow. So fascinating. Well, through your challenges, you've developed what you call the four truths. So I would love to hear about these. Can you share about the four truths?
Sure. The four truths are, people ask me, how did you come up with the four truths? I was actually on a podcast where I can't remember the title, but it had something to do with your truths. And the woman who was the host was like, I need three truths. And I'm, oh my, I better codify these, I better get these down on paper. I've since added one to them. But I'll give them to you. I have them on a Post-it note sitting here on my desk, and I see them multiple times during the day. So they constantly get reinforced in my mind. The first one is you need to control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more determined or more resilient individual. The third one is more of I guess, a legacy truth, for lack of a better word. And it's what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the fourth one, I think, is pretty self explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. So I use those. I kind of call them sort of the bedrock of my soul. They're just they're good things to sort of build a quality life off of. And I recommend them. I give them to people when I talk and stuff like that. And so if they work for you, use them. If one works for you, then use that and develop your own around the one that I gave you. So, I call them my four truths. They're not mine. I don't own them. They're not copyrighted or anything. I mean, I don't think you can necessarily own a truth, but they're definitely something that play a big part in my life.
Yeah. Well, do you have examples? I mean, we've talked a lot actually about pain. And one of those was, kind of embrace that. Do you have examples for these of how you've been able to apply it within your own life?
I do. I think the first one, control your mind or it will control you, was something I learned early in life. I had 3 knee surgeries in high school as a result of basketball injuries. And I remember when I went back playing basketball, my brain was putting all kinds of negative thoughts into my mind. Things like, hey, you're probably a step slower since these surgeries. And college coaches aren't going to be interested in reaching out, about
Mm.
you playing for their college or university. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I'm still playing at an elite level, and coaches are still reaching out about the possibility of playing for their school. So I learned that I had to change the narrative. I had to sort of flip the switch and put something positive in there. And I get asked a lot, how do I go from being a glass half empty to a glass half full type of person? And my recommendation is, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to just flip a switch and say, okay, I'm positive today. But what I encourage people to do is, first of all, recognize you have those negative thoughts. I think the Cleveland Clinic did a study and says that on any given day, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts that pass through our mind, most of which we're not even cognizant of. But your mind can only hold one thought at a time. Why would you want to make that a negative one? So I always encourage people understand that negative thoughts are going to be there. We're human beings. I don't care how positive you are, you're still going to have negative thoughts. But realize that negative thought is there. Don't get all excited about it, but then change it to something that's positive, something that works for you, for your benefit. And over time, and I don't know what that time period is for people, but over time, your mind will start to expect more positive thoughts than it will negative. So it's a pretty simple fix, but simple things a lot of times are difficult to implement in our lives. So that's the first one. The second one about embracing the pain and the difficulty. We're all going to experience pain in our lives. And it doesn't have to be cancer pain or even any kind of an illness. It could be, as simple as you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or, you have a fender bender on the way to church, or you don't get the promotion at work that you believe you deserve. Pain is inevitable. Suffering, on the other hand, suffering's optional. Suffering's what you do with that pain. Do you take it and use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual? Or do you wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself and want other people to feel sorry for you? I look at, our brains being hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. The problem with that is, the status quo. It's comfortable to the brain and it should be left alone. But the problem with that is the only way we're going to grow, the only way we're going to develop, the only way we're going to get better is if we step outside our comfort zones and do things that make us uncomfortable. I used to be a girls' high school basketball coach down in Texas, and my players will tell you that I used to constantly say to them, you need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So with that, I guess I'm just saying, instead of running from pain, try to do just the opposite. Take that pain, flip it inside, burn it as fuel, use it as energy to make you a stronger and more resilient individual. That's number two. Number three, I think it's important for all of us, regardless of what stage of life we're in, to sort of look at the end game. What are people going to say about you at your funeral? What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? I have actually friends who actually read the obituary page in the newspaper or online every day for two reasons. One, to keep themselves humble, and two, to remind themselves that someday somebody's going to be reading their obituary. When I had my leg amputated and I found out I had these tumors in my lungs, I went with my wife to the mortuary and to the cemetery and to the church, and I planned my funeral. And because I go on podcasts and I do speaking engagements where I talk about motivation and the need to keep moving forward, I actually got some brushback from people who commented that somehow planning my funeral was in some way defeatist. I kind of had to remind these people that the last time I checked, we're all going to die. Don't think anybody's working on a cure for life right now. We're all going to die, but we're not all going to really live. And I heard a Native American.
Ooh, wow. Oh, say that again.
All of us are going to die, but not all of us are really going to live. And I think that's pretty deep if you think about it. I heard a Native American Blackfoot proverb years ago that I love, and it goes like this: when you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not looking to hasten my demise in any way, shape, or form, but death isn't nearly as scary for me because I believed I lived the purpose for which I was put on this earth to do. So that's number three. And then number four, like I said, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. But the way that resonates with me is this: someday my pain is going to end. It may end through surgery, may end through some type of new medication. Quite frankly, it may end when I die. But if I quit, if I give up, if I give in to pain, then pain will always be a part of my life.
Wow. Thank you so much. That is profound. I mean and I love the clarity and the how it's condensed and it's easily, they're like short, quick truths, but they're very layered and they're very deep. And so, you could easily take one a week and just really kind of ruminate on them or meditate on them or whatever. And you offer such a unique perspective with the situation that you find yourself in today, because it's very easy for somebody who who isn't experiencing chronic pain or loss or disease, that are potentially, where you literally, and like you say, it's all, death is on the horizon for all of us. But when we have a diagnosis that makes it feel like that comes closer to the present moment, um, it offers us an opportunity to go, defeatist, or making us stronger and to help us fulfill our purpose. And by the way, um, I'm tuned into, like, when something, my body will give me like a yes when something is like really like cosmically true. And when you said something about like that, you're fulfilling your purpose, I feel again right now, it was like, whew, full tingles, like full resonance of like, yes, you're doing it. So for what that's worth, well done.
I appreciate that. It's we a lot of times we talk about our purpose or our passion or our why or whatever you want to call it, and we think of it as our job. Whatever we're doing for a living, that's our, and people get so caught up in that. It's like, oh, I'm not really happy at my job, so I must not be. And your job doesn't have to be your purpose. I mean, your job could be something over here that you do to pay the bills, but your purpose is over here to write or to podcast host or to meditate or to teach or to whatever it is. And I always say, especially to young people, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things that you're going to regret are not going to be the things you did. They're going to be the things you didn't do. And by then, it's going to be too late to go back and do them.
I love that. And I agree wholeheartedly when it comes to purpose. I mean, I had an experience, or a friend of mine who was doing like energy work, and she was really like connecting with people and really helping to heal people. And she, not that long ago, decided to take a corporate job. And it was just the the needs of her family, like where her family was at that time, necessitated a change, an increase in her income level. But they're also like the everything was just falling into place really, really easily. And it was like this job came out of nowhere. It was like perfect with her past experience, and the flexibility was there, and da da da. And there was a part of her that was like, but it doesn't feel like as purposeful. I mean, I don't think she put it in that way, but she was definitely hesitant. Like, she was seeing the signs coming in, and she realized that it was really kind of happening for her. Like, it was just kind of like the puzzle pieces were coming in for her to just step in and say yes. But it's like, who knows what a person like that in that particular organization can do for the other people who are there working, to have this amazing anchor of light that's in, sitting at a cubicle, or where, I don't know, she might be working from home, but at least metaphorically sitting in a cubicle, kind of ticking the boxes and following a project plan, and whatever it is. Again, I'm totally making that up, but I'm going back to my corporate experience. But having, like, it's not so often, it's not about the what makes up your day-to-day job. And it can be that there would not be another way to as deeply impact the lives of the people that we'll be surrounded by, even though it might on the surface not look like it's a job of service, that it may look more like a practical, 9 to 5 job. But it's like, wow, just to be able to have the courage and the trust to say, okay, this is what's presenting, but it seems counterintuitive. It feels like I stepped away from this for growth. And now, like, am I going backwards or whatever? So, it's really like it's important to trust. And I love this broader picture that you're talking about of seeing our purpose with a bigger scope. It pulled back, like life purpose and everything that our life offers us, and not feeling like only those who are serving in this particular way are making a difference.
I think you make a huge point, and I think it's an incredibly good point. And as you were talking, a story was coming to my mind. I had a nurse who, when I first met her, she was about my daughter's age, so 25, 26, already a nurse, but was in training in the unit where I get my infusions every third week. And a couple months ago, she was taking care of me by herself. And she said to me, Tara, I've got a story I want to tell you, but I'm a little uncomfortable saying that to you. And I mean, what do you say to something like that? It's like, well, it sounds like it might be a good story. I'd love to hear it, but I mean, you've got to decide you want to tell me. And she said, came back a couple hours later, and she said, all right, here's the deal. She said, when I first met you, she said, I was going to get out of nursing. She said, I had a good friend of mine die. I was in a really dark place. I talked to my mom and dad. I was going to quit nursing and I was going to go to work for Amazon. And she said, and then I met you and I see what you go through. I see all the ugliness that you go through. I read your story and I knew I was where I was supposed to be. Now, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that my life had a positive impact on her like that. And I always wonder, how many people are out there that just for one day would give everything they have to trade places with us? They're kind of admiring us from our on far and just sort of looking at, I want to be like him or I want to be like her. And I sort of think back. There's an entrepreneur, a guy by the name of Ed Milet. He talks about the four types of people in the world. He said there's the unmotivated, which is the vast majority of people in the world, and then there's the motivated, and that's kind of sort of a stick and a carrot thing. If you do this, then this will happen. He said then there's the inspirational people. And inspirational comes from in spirit. Their spirit sort of lights the way for other people. And then there's aspirational people where you just live your life and people sort of gravitate to you based on your energy or how you conduct yourself or what you're saying or things like that. And I think back on that and I think, I want to be that. I would like to be an aspirational type of person. But when I was growing up, there was a basketball coach at UCLA who had a great quote that kind of goes along with this. And it went like this: a careful person I want to be, a little person follows me. I dare not go astray for fear they may go the same way. So I kind of like that. It's just like, you have to live your life based on what you're supposed to do. And I'm not saying you need to live somebody else's life, but I think we all need to sort of step back and think about the decisions we make, not just how they impact us, but how they potentially may impact other people and even other people that we even have no idea who those people are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's really powerful. And I love also just the kind of passive guidance. This kind, again, like the trust of the universe, of that we're gonna, that the right people will find us even if we never know. That kind of takes the pressure off of,
Yeah.
like, okay, I've got to put myself in the right places and so on. So that's really powerful. Well, I have enjoyed this immensely. How can people find out more about you or connect with you?
So I have a blog. Every day I put up a thought for the day, and with that thought usually comes a question about maybe how you could apply it into your life. On Mondays I put up the Monday morning motivational message, which is a video or a story that I find that I think has meaning to people. All that, including my social media networks, you can leave me a note. You can get access to my book. It's all at motivationalcheck.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, oh, and I did, and I mentioned your book, but do you want to tell us a little bit? I forgot to come back to that. So, your book is Sustainable Excellence, and is this a memoir or more of a
In,
guidance book?
in some ways, it's a memoir. In some ways, it's not. It was really a book born out of two conversations I had. One was with a former player that I had coached who had moved to Colorado, where my wife and I live, and the four of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner, I'm really excited that you're living close and I can watch you find and live your purpose. And she got real quiet for a while. And she looked at me and she's like, well, coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, using your unique gifts and talents and living that reason. And then I had a young man who reached out to me. The second sort of story around the book was he asked me what I thought were the most important things he should learn, not to just be successful in his job or in business, but to be successful in life. And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help others. Not that those aren't important. Those are incredibly important. But I wanted to see if I could go deeper with him. And so eventually I came up with these 10 principles and I sent them to him. And then I kind of stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath that principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates this principle. So literally during the time I was healing after my leg was amputated, and before I started chemo for the tumors in my lungs, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles. And that's how sustainable excellence, the 10 principles to leading your uncommon and extraordinary life, came to be.
Wow. And they can get that on your book, on your website.
They can get it on the website. They can pretty much get it anywhere you can get a book online. Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, Apple iBooks. I've also started a membership around the book. So you can go to sustainableexcellencemembership.com and download a free copy of the book if you don't want to spend the money for it, but you still want to read it.
Okay, beautiful. Well, Terry, this has really been a beautiful connection. Thank you so much for your time, and many blessings on your continued journey and healing.
Well, Kara, thank you. I can use all the healing I can get. And, I know you're all about energy in that. So anything you could send my way would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, absolutely.